Hello and welcome to JRock's Pop Culture Revolution. This is episode number 23, and today we're going to be talking all about this balance. Okay, now, for anybody who does not know, Balance is the 10th studio album by Van Halen. It was released on January 24th, 1995, to be exact, folks. It should be noted that Balance was the final studio album to feature singer Sammy Hagar, who had replaced original lead singer David Lee Roth back in 1985. So by the time this album comes out, Sammy Hagar had been with Van Halen for an entire decade. Wow, pretty impressive. And the time that Sammy spent in Van Halen was quite impressive because you got to go back to 1985, folks. And remember when David Lee Roth left Van Halen, the original singer, everybody at the time, me included, thought there's no way Van Halen's going to be able to replace Diamond David Lee Roth. Well, we were all proven wrong because, like I said, Sammy Hagar, ex-Montrose singer, successful solo artist in his own right at the time, had met Eddie Van Halen. It was their mechanic, I guess, who put the two in touch because they shared the same mechanic. And well, it had not been for that, who knows if Sammy would have even landed the gig, but thank God that he did. And today I chose Balance to talk about because, again, it's an interesting album that we're going to get into. In fact, there's so much to talk about this album, Balance, that came out in 1995, that this is going to be a two-part episode, folks. And today we're going to talk specifically about the album. Now, what I got here is the 30th anniversary edition of Balance. This came out last August, to be exact, and it's a two-part, it's a two CD set, and we're gonna get into that. But today we're going to specifically talk about the original album, being that this is a two CD set. As you see, if I open it up, okay, it's got that's what it looks like. The inside cover. You got a great band photo of the guys. You open it up, it's a great two CD set there. And so today we're going to be talking about the original album, which is basically CD one, and it's got all the original tracks. And then the second CD, which we're going to talk specifically about when we do part two of this episode about 1 week from now. It's kind of got some rarities. It's got some rare tracks. It's got a concert from Wembley that they recorded at Wembley Stadium. So we're going to talk all about that when we do part two next time. But today we're going to talk about the original album. Okay. Now here's what you need to know. The album debuted at #1 on the Billboard Top 200 chart. Now you got to remember, every single Van Halen album that featured Sammy Hagar went to #1. So again, all four of the studio albums with Sammy went to #1. Very, very impressive. That they were able to maintain that high level of success after they parted ways with the original lead singer David Lee Roth, folks. During the recording of Balance, it should also be noted that tension started to grow within the band, especially between the Van Halen brothers, Alex and Eddie, and singer Sammy Hagar. Actually, there's kind of two fractions of the band at the time, that the album was being recorded. Of course, half the band, you had Sammy Hagar and bassist Michael Anthony, who seemed to be like the best of friends, and they got along. They were kind of the fun guys of the band. And then Alex and Eddie, they were fun guys too, but they were all about running the band and seeing that things were done their way, and they were a little more businesslike. And the thing with the brothers is, being brothers, Ed and Al would always stick together. They would always kind of, no matter what, and being that they were brothers, and Alex Van Halen, he alluded to some of this in his book Brothers, if you got a chance to read it, where basically he talks about, that because they were brothers, Eddie and Alex, Alex was talking about in his book that, they'd argue like brothers do, but he says at the end of the day, like one of the things their father taught them was, um, like Alex being the older brother, he was taught that you look after your little brother, and you know what? No matter what, you guys are a team. You stick together, and so that's kind of what happened in the Van Halen camp. But the brothers, no matter what, they were always like this. Even if they disagreed on things, they were always like together. And then there was other guys, Sammy and Mike, who were kind of another fraction of the band, if you will. Like I said, during the recording of Balance, tensions between the Van Halen brothers and Sammy Hagar really started to boil over. And this is what it says. And eventually, these tensions would lead Sammy Hagar to leave Van Halen in 1996, 1 year later after the album was released. Now, of course, depending on who you talk to, the Van Halen brothers say that Sammy left the band because he wanted to go off and be a solo artist again. Sammy tells a story that no, he was fired. So again, it depends on who you talk to. But the bottom line is by 1996, 1 year after this album comes out, Sammy Hagar is no longer in Van Halen, folks. Okay. And so it says the album was produced, of course, by legendary producer Bruce Fairbairn. He's a guy who had previously worked with both Aerosmith and Bon Jovi. So, their previous albums they'd worked with Ted Templeman, but I guess for this album Balance in 1995, they wanted to try to work with a different producer. So they went ahead and brought Bruce Fairbairn into the picture, and he was a legendary producer. I should tell you guys. I mean, like I said, worked with Aerosmith and Bon Jovi. Bruce Fairbairn, a number of years ago, he passed away, so he is no longer with us. But you go look up Bruce Fairbairn, and I tell you, as a producer, that guy had a legendary career. You should really look at what he did. And let's talk about the sound of Balance. I mean, the sound of Balance is a little darker than your typical Van Halen album. I think that had a lot to do with the tensions that obviously were going on within the band. Also, is a time in the music industry where grunge was taking over the rock world, and a lot of the rock bands that we all love were not doing as great. They weren't selling as many records as they once were. And Van Halen, they were one of the bands that were able the grunge movement didn't really affect Van Halen all that much business wise, but it also makes you think that, okay, if you listen to the songs on Balance, they're a little darker than your typical Van Halen album. People think that maybe if you listen to Balance, people say, oh, it's their grunge album. They're trying to go dark. They're trying to, Eddie Van Halen, if anybody knows anything about the Van Halen story, go back and listen to their 1981 album, Fair Warning. That was Eddie's attempt to kind of take control of the band back in 1981 and kind of get away from the typical kind of commercial pop sound that Van Halen was known for. Basically, that was kind of a type of tunes that David Lee Roth was always kind of putting out there. And so on Fair Warning, you may remember Eddie wanted to kind of go for a darker, kind of more heavier sound than what Van Halen had typically been known for. So it's not the first time in the band's career, but they, put out a darker album. But if you really are honest, the sound of Balance is all over the place. Because I mean, let's look at some of the songs. I mean, one of my all-time favorite songs is it was a single. It was called "Can't Stop Loving You." Very catchy pop commercial sounding song. And it's really like a good time music, good vibes, if you will, and great pop sound. I kind of put it up there with something like Dance the Night Away. I mean, Can't Stop Loving You, that's another one of those tunes you just can't get the song out of your head once you've heard it, but in a good way. I mean, that's anytime I hear Can't Stop Loving You or see the video or or if a song comes on the radio, I just start breaking out and singing it. It's just a great good time song, you know. So not all of Balance is really a dark song sounding album. It's just a lot of the songs are darker than what Van Halen was typically known for. So like if you were to put this up to maybe something like Women and Children First, or even 5150. Um, it doesn't have so many commercial sounding tunes. I mean, there's some on there, but like I said, it's a much darker album than what Van Halen was typically known for. And of course, Balance, like a lot of the Van Halen albums, was recorded at Eddie Van Halen's home studio 5150. Of course, 5150, as you know, is a California code for the criminally insane. So I'm not sure why they named 5150 that, but it's a fun kind of a little bit of trivia there. If you weren't aware, that's what 5150 is. It's the California code for criminally insane folks. Okay. The songs on Balance, as I said, were darker. Eddie Van Halen started to experiment with drop D tuning, heavier guitar tones than on previous Van Halen albums, and it could have been, because again, in 1995, grunge music was huge. You had bands like Nirvana, Pearl Jam, Soundgarden, Alice in Chains that were huge, and maybe it's a case of Eddie's was being influenced by some of this stuff and thought, you know what, I want to do some of that, and so one of the songs where that really is kind of apparent is the song "Don't Tell Me What Love Can Do." Now I got to tell you, folks, I remember when Balance came out, and I got it in 1995. That was the first single and music video off the album was "Don't Tell Me What Love Can Do." Again, it was it was a little more grungier sounding, a little more grittier. It had darker guitar tone, like we're talking about. But I remember when the song came out, I was not a big fan of it. I didn't really dig it, and I think maybe at the time it was because it was so different sounding than what I thought of what Van Halen was supposed to sound like. But I will tell you, in prepping for doing this episode, I whipped out this album. I was listening to it on my way to work, on my way home, because I knew I was going to be doing this episode tonight. I wanted to kind of get in the mode, the balance mode, and I kind of fall in love with this song. I mean, again, it was not a song I originally like even liked at all, but it's grown on me. It's one of those songs, and I have, I think, a much better appreciation for the song now and what it means, and we're going to get into some of that. So stay tuned, okay? The song "Don't Tell Me What Love Can Do" has a much darker sound than most people think of. Again, when they think of Van Halen, the song is partly about the belief that love solves everything. Again, growing up, in the 1970s and 80s when I did, another big thing at the time that bands did would they would have like a power ballad, or they'd talk about how love was the answer, love could solve any problem. Well, this song in particular, "Don't Tell Me What Love Can Do," is kind of saying the complete opposite. You know what? Love is not always the answer. Love is not always, in fact, love causes a lot of problems. It's kind of the flip side of, love is the answer. So, maybe again, that's why I didn't originally have a lot of love for the song, because I'm like, oh, because I remember when grunge was huge. One of the things I thought about, but I really could kind of understand at the time, man, this grunge music, it's so depressing. I want to listen to something that's going to make me feel good. Some good time music. I want to listen to some music that's going to rock my world, if you will. Something like another great Van Halen song that'll kind of get you in the mode. Something like "Jump" from album 1984. That was a great that's a great pick me up song. Good time vibes. It gets you in the mood to rock, whatever. very keyboard oriented, yes, and that was quite different at the time when it came out. But compared to something like "Don't Tell Me What Love Can Do," I remember hearing the song the first time. One of the things I thought immediately, oh, this is a kind of depressing kind of sounding tune, and then they did a great music video for it, but in fact, I liked the music video a little more than I remember liking the song. But again, listening to the song today, I kind of fell in love with the song now. All these years later, it's really grown on me. So sometimes music will do it. It'll have that kind of effect on you. And another thing I was reading that Sammy Hagar said that when he first heard the news of Kurt Cobain's death, his first reaction was, I wish I could have been there and maybe I could have tried to save him. Again, maybe that's it's kind of a sweet thought for maybe Sammy Hagar to have, but I don't know, Sam, if I'd want to be there. I mean, maybe you'd want to be there, try to talk the guy out from doing it, saying, hey, Kurt, don't do it, man. You got so much talent, you got so much stuff to live for. Don't do it, Kurt. I mean, maybe he could have talked about. Who knows? But again, could you imagine if you were there and you tried to talk Kurt Cobain out of killing himself? Hey, Kurt, give me the gun. Hey, Kurt, let's go take a walk or something. That would have been great, Sam, if you could have done that. But on the flip side, what if he wouldn't have listened? And could you imagine being there and seeing the guy blow his head off? Oh, wow. So again, when you realize that the song is also partly about the death of Kurt Cobain, the suicidal death, and Sammy Hagar's kind of reaction to hearing the news of Kurt Cobain's suicide. I wasn't aware of that at the time, but kind of again, it gives knowing this now gives me kind of a new appreciation, a new perspective on the song. And the song, interesting enough, like okay, the song "Don't Tell Me What Love Can Do" was #1 on mainstream rock radio, and again, I just think that's so amazing because this was a different time in the rock world, what was going on, and the fact that Van Halen could have such a dark song go to #1, and it wasn't a type of song that they were known for doing. But that's another thing I love about that is that they had a #1 song with something that was totally out of left field. It was totally out of what they were known for doing. So I got to give the guys a lot of credit for having the balls to put out a song like that. And again, one of my other all-time favorite Van Halen songs, not just off this album, but period, that we already talked about was "Can't Stop Loving You." Now, it was commercial rock radio, pop ear candy, and it was one of the most commercial, good time music type of songs on the entire album. So again, probably this is the most happy-go-lucky song on the entire Balance album, but it's a must-hear song. And this is I kind of talking about the fact that "Don't Tell Me What Love Can Do" was such a dark song. Well, if you want a good time song that's going to get you up on your feet, rocking away and just smiling and dancing, "Can't Stop Loving You" is the song you're going to want to put on to do that. And "Can't Stop Loving You" hit #30 on mainstream rock radio chart. Now, again, I can't, #30 is not bad, but I don't see how such a fun song as "Can't Stop Loving You" doesn't go to #1. Are you kidding me? Oh man! But again, I think 1995, the world was very different, and I think like if this album had come out maybe in 1984, 85, I think "Can't Stop Loving You" would have been the #1 track. Who knows? But okay, now like I said, a thing that bands were known for doing at that time was coming up with these great power ballads. Now, again, Van Halen was not a band that was typically known for doing that. If you really go back in the history of Van Halen, the closest thing I can really kind of remember that even came close to being what you call a ballad is on the 1984 album. They had this song, um, "I'll Wait," big radio hit, and come to find out, it's a song. If you want to learn some controversy about a Van Halen song, the song "I'll Wait" was co-written by David Lee Roth and Doobie Brothers Michael McDonald. And Michael McDonald had to take the band to court, and I think they came up with a settlement, but they tried to release the song without giving him any credit. But so that's a little bit of kind of fun trivia. But again, get back to my point. In the whole history of Van Halen, "I'll Wait" is the closest thing the band ever had to a power ballad. But now they really stepped it up on balance with the ballad "Not Enough." Now it's a great music video. I mean, Eddie Van Halen had a very different look. He'd cut his beautiful long hair. He had like a flat top type of hairdo. He'd grown a beard, um, and he's a little older. I think um, I think three of the four guys in the band were going through a divorce. The Van Halen brothers both, and Sammy was going through a divorce. So um, that might have been why too. That album was a little darker, but "Not Enough," which is a piano-driven ballad, power ballad. Um, it had moderate chart success. Now this is what's kind of funny. Now again, if this is a song, "Not Enough," had been released back in 1984, 85, this is one of those songs I think that would have hit number one. But being 1995 was the era of the grunge music movement. As great of a song as "Not Enough" is, it only hit number 97 on the Hot 100 chart. Hit number 27 on mainstream rock, so got a little more attention there. But again, if this song had been released at a different time, it would have been a huge hit. It would have been all over MTV too. But in 1995, not a lot of hard rock and metal bands were getting their stuff played on MTV. And all the videos off of Balance, they played on MTV, but they were not in heavy rotation, which is another kind of interesting fact. And that's why a lot of these songs on this album did not chart probably what like you would have expected them to. Um, and the song "Not Enough" was one of the lowest charting Van Halen songs of the 1990s. And again, that's one of my favorite songs, not just off of Balance, but in the whole history of Van Halen. That's one of these songs. It's what I call a really great deep cut. I don't know if they've ever played it in concert, but man, could you imagine? That would have been a cool song to hear in concert. And, I love the music video for it. Again, you watch the video, and this is a song. "Not Enough's" a great power ballad. Great. It's a love song. It'll break your heart. It's about kind of I guess a guy being in love with a girl and breaking his heart, and as much as he loves her, he just kind of realizes that it's just not enough. And in fact, I think it might have even been about Sammy Hagar's first wife, who he was in the midst of a divorce with at the time. And I think it had to do a lot with his divorce and his feelings about, going through a divorce at the time. Um, so interesting that, again, as great of a song as it is, it was one of the lowest charting Van Halen songs. So, wow, I just could not believe that. But, 1995, grunge music was everywhere. Grunge music was the scene, if you will. Now, okay, some more fun facts for you guys. The song that kicks off the album, "The Seventh Seal," pretty heavy track. Um, even for a Van Halen track, it's pretty heavy. Now, "The Seventh Seal," as I said, was nominated for Best Hard Rock Performance and for the Grammys, but Van Halen lost out to Soundgarden for their hit song "Black Hole Sun." Now, again, "Black Hole Sun" was a much bigger hit. I mean, sometimes you wonder how they choose which songs to nominate. Now, I don't question nominating a song like "Black Hole Sun" by Soundgarden. That was a huge hit at the time. Seventh Seal. I mean, I would have even okay. I would have understood if you want to nominate a Van Halen song. Okay, maybe "Can't Stop Loving You," maybe "Not Enough," maybe for "Don't Tell Me What Love Can Do," because at least those were released as singles. They've been played on the radio and MTV. People were These are tracks that the mainstream rock audience was quite aware of. Um, Seventh Seal, it's a great song, but it's not like like you asked me to name a Van Halen song. Typically people might yell out stuff like "Right Now," "Jump," "Hot for Teacher," "Dance the Night Away." Seventh Seal is not a song that typically comes up on a lot of rock fans. Talking about Seventh Seal. I mean, it's a great track. It kicks off the album, but again, I don't see why nominating a song like that didn't really have a lot of even radio airplay. So again, you could see why Black Hole Sun won, because Soundgarden was huge at the time, and that was all over MTV. That was all over radio. You probably had a lot of people asking, "Seventh Seal, what's that?" Um, Now, some more interesting Van Halen Grammy tribute for you guys here. Um, the band was first nominated in 1984 for their hit song "Jump," I believe, but it wasn't until 1992 that Van Halen would finally win their one and only Grammy for their hit album "For Unlawful Carnal Knowledge." Now, again, in 1992, they win a Grammy. They're nominated for their hit album "For Unlawful Carnal Knowledge." And there's a bit of a controversy around the album title, because I guess it was Sammy Hagar came up with the title, and he kind of realized that, hey, if you abbreviate, you take the first letter of each of those words, it spells out Fuck. Okay, you guys, you know what I'm talking about. Um, Now, again, this is a darker time, and a little bit of a controversy here with the Balance album. Now, first of all, yeah, get a load of the album cover. You got these Siamese twins on the cover. Now, we're going to talk about that controversy next time in part two, because there's quite a bit to talk about. But this is, like I said, one of the big controversies surrounding the Balance album was the lyrics for the song "Amsterdam." Amsterdam is an upbeat track. It's track number 4 to be exact, folks, on the album. And it was inspired by the band's visit to the city of Amsterdam. The song celebrates the city's liberal laws and attitudes towards marijuana. One of the lines in the song is "Wham, Bam, Amsterdam," which is about the city's marijuana cafes and relaxed attitudes toward drugs. Okay. And again, this being 1995, folks, if you're a rock band at the level of Van Halen, you're not supposed to be too much into promoting any kind of drug use. So for that reason alone, MTV they didn't refuse to play the video, but they didn't play it in heavy rotation. Let's put it that way. And so we're going to get into kind of some of that. Eddie and Alex Van Halen were very proud of their Dutch heritage, and they felt that singer Sammy Hagar had reduced their home country to just weed and partying. So again, there was this kind of tension building between the brothers and Sammy Hagar at the time, in 1995, as the album was being recorded and the songs were being written, and they really had a problem with Sammy, writing these lyrics to the song "Amsterdam." Hey, you're kind of making our home country look bad. You're kind of you're shining a light on, all this drug use and marijuana stuff, and we wish you'd just be quiet about it. But the song still got on the album, and this is what it said. Okay, so the Van Halen brothers felt that the song was immature, embarrassing, made Amsterdam look like a stereotype, didn't represent the country respectively. And I could kind of get that if you're Alex and Eddie and you're talking about, hey, that's our home country. You're not making it look too good. We don't really appreciate that. But then again, I could kind of see from Eddie and Alex's perspective, first of all, being that they were Dutch and they were proud of where they came from, and they didn't really like Sammy Hagar's lyrics. They felt it was not respectful to their home country. I get that, and I also get the fact, again, that they were kind of the guys running the band. They were maybe more concerned than their singer about not just how their home country looked, but they were kind of more worried maybe about the image of the band. Like, hey, we don't want to look like we're promoting any kind of heavy drug use, but at the same time, that's somewhat hypocritical when you know, if you know anything about the history of Van Halen, that the two Van Halen brothers were massive alcoholics. Eddie struggled his whole entire life with alcoholism, and even Alex in his books talks about that his brother's heavy use of drugs and stuff, and so Eddie for most of his life was struggling with drug addiction and massive alcohol. Alex was able to eventually, because seeing their father die of alcoholism, Alex didn't want to die that way, and Alex was eventually able to kind of sober up and quit drinking altogether. So there's that. Singer Sammy Hagar, though, he defended the song lyrics, saying that he couldn't understand why the Van Halen brothers took such offense to the lyrics. He says, "Hey, look," he said, "we're here to when you write a song, you want to make it fun. The song is fun, it's celebratory. It's about the cannabis culture, which is a part of Amsterdam culture." He said, "Look, how often do you see rock music often it often uses huge exaggeration. So, there's that. The song Amsterdam, okay, again, in spite of all this tension going on within the band between the Van Halen brothers and Sammy Hagar, it's a fun little song. And like anything, the more somebody tells you not to do something or don't listen to that, we're not going to play this because of that, or we're going to put a sticker on the album cover, the more people are going to be attracted or want to go and check that out. But it says the song Amsterdam became such it became a hit almost, kind of in spite of all the controversy around it. Sammy Hagar and the Van Halen brothers, it created so much tension between the brothers and Sammy that they refused to appear in the music video for Amsterdam with Hagar. Instead, the music video, and you can go on YouTube and check this out. Check out the music video. It's a fun little video. But there's so much tension between the band members at the time that they would not appear in the music video together. So what they had to do instead, the music video featured live performances, shots, separate shots of the band members, concert scenes from the Balance Tour. So again, it's kind of one of these videos where they had a bunch of footage they just kind of used, and they had separate shots of the different band members, and so that's what you're seeing here. And again, this is a fun fact because it says, despite the controversy, Amsterdam became a top 10 hit on the mainstream rock chart. And again, Now, I get a kick out of this because, again, I think the more you tell somebody something is bad or you don't like it, any kind of controversy like that, people are gonna make it a hit. Again, the fact that a song like "Not Enough," a great power ballad like that, it charts, but only at number 97. But yet, because of this controversy, the song "Amsterdam," it's a catchy little tune, but it's I don't know, it's something like "Can't Stop Loving You" if it sticks in your head. But yet it becomes a top 10 hit at mainstream radio. Just think about that, folks. That's kind of tells you what was going on in 1995. And like I said, grunge was huge, and that's why an album like Balance got really kind of mixed reviews. It probably should have done, but again, I laugh when I say it should have done better because it was the fourth consecutive number one album for Van Halen with Sammy Hagar. So it can't really do much better than a number one album. But I think it was more the way people responded to the different sounding tunes, on this album. The fact that it was a little darker. Um, Another interesting thing maybe we'll get into next time is I think on balance there's like three instrumental tracks. Okay, which is kind of a unique thing for a Van Halen album. And then because of the song's openly references to marijuana, MTV at the time in 1995 limited how heavily they rotated the video. In the mid 1990s, MTV still had strict policies regarding explicit drug references and certain things that might be seen as encouraging drug use. So there's that. So again, this is kind of a little sleeve, a little booklet you get with the album. And I just want you guys to see that's kind of interesting album cover. That's another let's picture some Siamese twins. And there's a little, as you can imagine, a bit of a controversy regarding the album cover. So when we do part two next week, we're going to talk some about that and some other stuff, some of the rarities and what you get in disc two. And then great look. I always love this. Great looking band photo here of the man from 1995. Front and center is the late great King Eddie Van Halen, looking quite different there. And it's kind of interesting if you notice Sammy Hagar and Michael Anthony are kind of in the way back of the photo. And you got the two Van Halens up front and center. So I don't know if that was intentional, just the way the photo was shot. Who knows? But Balance is one of those albums does not disappoint. And again, number one album, so it's hard to say it could have done any better, right? But interesting album, final thing we get from the band and Sammy Hagar. So there's that. So go. I really urge you guys to rip out Balance, put it on, give it another spin. If it's been a long time since you listened, it's a great album. Brought back a lot of great memories for me. And do yourself a favor because I like some of these reissues they put out like this. A fun thing about this one, and we're going to get into disc two and all that next time. But this is a 30th anniversary edition. Like I said, folks, you get a 2 CD set. That's always fun. I always love getting extra stuff. That's why we're going to do part two of this. Thanks for tuning in, and I am Jason JRock Houston, and you've been watching JRock's Pop Culture Revolution. This has been episode number 23. Thanks for tuning in, folks. See you again next time for part two of our special on the classic 1995 album by Van Halen, Balance. So tune in. See you then. Bye for now.